Hi, I'm Catherine Morgan from Point A to Point B Transitions, and welcome to Evolving Working. Today, Susan Eckstein and I are going to riff on something we both got super excited about and we wanted to share with you. But in case you don't know, Susan, tell us a little bit about your background.
I am Susan Eckstein. I'm a women's empowerment expert. I'm a certified coach and a keynote speaker. And in a nutshell, I help high achieving women own their personal power so they can stop shrinking and really have the confidence to be seen, be heard, and take up space.
Beautiful. So I am a huge fan of Rob Bell and I buy whatever he puts out. And he recently put out an 6-hour audiobook series that I'll share with people called Handling Your Fire, Passion, Burnout, Routines, and Resilience. And I loved it so much that I gifted to Angie, who works with me. I gifted it to Susan. I gifted it to somebody else. And I personally listened to it 4 times because it's awesome. And now we're going to talk about why we think it's awesome. So Susan, what got you fired up about it? I'll let you go first.
It's like, where do I begin? I think, well, I can't speak for the reason why you gifted it to me, but what stood out to me and resonated so deeply with me was that it's a book about resilience and burnout, but it's ultimately about showing up, doing your work, serving the world, and having that come from a place of joy. And we've heard this for a long time, you need to be grateful, come from that energy. You need to be joyful, come from that energy. And when we're forcing that all the time, it just feels forced and we're never really in alignment with where we need to be. So he talks about this, I want to say, he says it's the Eucharist that we all have, but it comes from, like, if we look back on our lives, there's a through line, there's a natural thing that
the thread
that we all do, regardless of what situation we're in. It doesn't matter. It just comes out of us because that's who we are. That's our gift. And then throughout our lives, we have these setups. And so sometimes you can have a setup, and the setup could be different jobs, it could be different relationships, and the setup changes, but the thread is the same. And what I think that, at least I can speak for me, that I have just assumed that the setup was the thread. And when you look and right, so I looked at it that if I'm a coach, this is how coach has to be. This is the way you have to play. But in reality, if I look back and I look at my thread is really helping people do things that they thought were impossible. And that's my jam. And I don't have to label that, but that's how I just naturally show up wherever I am. So just changing that perspective and going, that work brings me joy. Okay, how can I do that work? And where can I do it? I don't have to accept this setup. I can create a setup that's uniquely mine, that allows me to thrive and come from a place of joy every day.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Because mine is really clear to me, I'll just walk people through what that might look like. So I would say my thread is being an advisor, is giving advice, being a confidant, suggesting strategy and things. And you can watch that throughout my career. My undergraduate degree was in psychology. After that, I worked in the markets, but then in technical analysis of the markets, which I always said was, using psychology on the markets. But then I got into sales. So I was advising my customers, listening to their needs, trying to find them the right solution. Hopefully we were, but if we weren't, trying to get them to the right solution. And after that, I worked for the consulting firms where, guess what I was? An advisor. So I got through the consulting firms and then I rolled out of that. And now I'm a career transition expert, also in an advisory role, helping people find their right next step, whether it's starting a business, fixing a business, getting a job in corporate, or any combination of that. So while my thread is advisor, I have used it as a salesman, as a consultant with the Big Four, as an independent consultant with helping people in career transition. And if I look at it from just the thread point of view, it's a nice through line. However, if I just told you my different jobs, you'd be like, what? Who is this woman? What does she do? What are her skills? But it's very clear if you look at it from the thread, has different setups. So clients come to me and they're like, well, I've been doing this, or I'm skilled in this, or I want to do this. And we pull apart. Okay, well, what's your genius or your thread, or what are you naturally good at? What are you passionate about? Where's your joy? And then I'm like, well, you could do it this way. You could do it this way. You could do it this way. And they can't see it because you only know what your experience has been or what someone close to you has been. You don't know that I've taken a private yacht chef and gotten them into software sales and they're crushing it. Like, so I have a different feeling about this thread and setup. What would you add to that? What do you see with your clients?
Well, I would add that many of the people that I speak to, they actually know what it is, but they see that they've created this setup and they see no way of being able to walk away from that, loosen that up, change things around. It just looks impossible because they're only looking at it through one, I'll say it like through one set of glasses, like they have this one perspective. And so what I have always, and like you having a varied background, you know, I've always helped people look at things in a different way and help them say, well, if they say, well, I can't, that's impossible. I would say, well, what if you can? What if it is possible? And being able to help them just open up the possibility that, wait, maybe, really? Do you think? And having that dialogue, and from that dialogue where they go into all of that, well, what if I can? And then you have all of those voices that come up, you know, from the depths of, you can't, who do you think you are? And then being able to pick that apart and help them, and me being their biggest cheerleader the entire time, they suddenly are doing things and looking at things in a way that they never thought that they could do. I mean, they just, you know, my background, you know, I went to college for music and English, and I was a concert flute player, and I really thought I was going to be a professional musician, and decided not to do that, got into public relations and learned how to, you know, more effectively communicate, and then realized I was in PR for a really long time and didn't like it. But there was a setup in there that I was so afraid to let go of. But I realized, you know what? I want to be like a spinning instructor. Like, I felt called to do that. And it's like, okay, let's try. And I was very scared. I didn't see, like, you know, at that point I was in my late 30s and I thought I was too old for the fitness industry. Looking back, I realized how ridiculous that was. But at the time I was like, there's no way. But my through line has always been, when I used to teach young musicians, it's always been about helping people expand and see things differently and help them feel empowered, and being willing to say, when you're unhappy, is it that I don't enjoy doing the thing that I've always done? Or is the setup that I'm trying to do this thing in really not working for me? And right, and being able to change it. Like I was talking to a friend, and we were using the example of, you know, you grow up loving numbers. You're like, give me an Excel sheet and it makes me really happy. So you say, you know what, I'm going to go become a CPA.
Good.
And you become a CPA and you do that for 20 years. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're absolutely miserable. And you think, I made the mistake. I should have never been a CPA. And it's like, no, that's not it. You still have the love for numbers. And you can do that anywhere. You just change the setup.
Right.
And as you know, that can be a very scary thing to face.
Oh, it's incredibly scary. And people are so locked in and there's so much fear mongering. Well, I've been doing this for so and so many years, or I'm in my 40s, or I'm in my 50s. It's too old to read, too old to school. Nobody will pay me. Nobody will take me seriously. There's a million. I just spend my time, you know, I'm a little bit of a smart aleck, and I'm just like, really? Really? You can drop your overhead. You can go back to school. You probably have 20 years to figure it out. You can learn a lot in 20 years. And you're right, those voices of things that happen to us somewhere along our career, some of it's from childhood. You know, I have my 8th grade cross country track teacher in my head to this day saying that I don't finish things. Guess what? I finished my book, Mr. Zambor, in your face.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we realize how much of that is, you know, you can have things that, you know, from childhood that are said to you that you may not be aware of until you're in situations and you're acting in a way that's out of alignment with where you want to be. I mean, I tell a story often about how a friend of mine and we had gone to a dance club, and it was like 80s night. And I don't remember the song, but this woman came out of nowhere and she went out onto the dance floor all by herself. And she was just dancing. And I was immediately attracted to the confidence that this woman had. And I was like, look how beautiful she is. She's just out there. She's moving her body. She's loving. And then all of it at the same time, it's like, look at her dressed like that. She only wants one thing. And I all of a sudden had all of these negative thoughts that had come in at the same time. And I thought, would you look at this? This is a huge conflict, even though I'm drawn to her confidence. And that's where instinctively my intuition is like, you need to be doing stuff like that. There were all of these things that became very apparent to me in that moment. And that's stuff that's operating underneath, that's sort of dictating how we move through the world. So being able to uncover all of that and go, well, that's really not me, but acknowledging it, it's so freeing, and you get to see where you've been holding yourself back. And when you want to change the setup, uncovering all of those voices and all of the, you know, I'll call it like you have a BS meter, like you call it out. Right. And people, you know, don't like to hear it, but it's like, okay, well, she's right. I really can change the way I look at this. I can position myself in a way that's feels more aligned to really who I am, instead of sticking myself in this box that I've been doing all along, thinking it would bring me joy, but it ultimately doesn't.
Yeah, and then there's the vague, there's a spectrum of vague dissatisfaction. It's like itchiness. You're like, oh, this doesn't fit anymore. To this isn't working. I'm getting headaches. I'm having Sunday night ickies. I am having trouble sleeping. I'm anxious when I, you know, log in or go into the office or whatever you're doing. Like it has a spectrum. And what I find is if you don't listen to this, you know, the whispers come, and then they're a little louder. And then at some point you get smacked upside the head. You know, because the change is there and you know you need to make it and you kind of want to make it, but you're terrified. And then we need to call someone like you to keep us focused and on track and say, no, you can do it. Yes, it's going to be really hard. But, you know, someone Susan and I mutually know has to do something the next 2 months. It's incredibly hard. And she knows it, and she knows it's the right decision. That doesn't make it any easier. It's really hard. We're both holding her hand saying, you can do this, you can do this.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said. It's being able to stop pushing down that voice, stop dismissing that voice, because like you said, it will stop you in your tracks. You know, it often goes unnoticed, or you're like, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden it can come and it could knock you on your ass, and you're just left with, what just happened and what do I do? Instead of just being open and going, wait, there's that thing again. There's that, why do I feel really pulled to go do that thing? That's really not where I'm supposed to be. And instead we say to ourselves, well, my path is this way. I have to go this way, even though that shiny thing keeps going, come look over here, come explore.
Delicious. Come here. Come here.
Exactly. But we shut it down. And I think that if we're willing to listen and go, okay, I'm just going to explore that and see where it goes, and just be aware of how you're feeling, what you're thinking. Do you get excited? Do you not? But at least you're opening yourself up to being curious about it and seeing where it goes, instead of just immediately saying, well, this is the path I've chosen, but you're not happy in the path. And again, it could just be the setup.
Could be the setup. Could just be the setup. You could do that same thing. If you're in a bad work environment, but you more or less like what you're doing, you could go to a better work environment, do your good work and be happy. But we don't think about that. We immediately extrapolate that, you know, if this type of organization is bad, then the other of this type. One pharma company is bad, all pharma companies are bad. One accounting firm's bad, all accounting firms are bad. No, each one's different.
Yeah, and being open to that. I mean, I worked with a woman last year who was not happy doing what she was doing. But really what it was is that she actually enjoyed doing what she was doing. But like what you just said, she felt like it didn't matter what company she went to doing that job. It was going to be the same mess.
Right.
And as she interviewed with some great companies, and she's like, I love this person that I would be working with, but it's, you know, it's going to be the same situation. Ultimately, she made the choice to change jobs. She was doing the same thing, but she was happy. But she had to be willing to say, all right, what if I go and I do the same thing? And like you've said many times, if you don't like it, you can leave. But at least
don't forget that.
Right.
They forget that. What? I can leave?
Yeah.
But yeah, you can look for another job. You can quit. You can do all sorts of things. Yeah, the other parts that I like that are included in the audiobook is giving permission to explore, get curious, and not assuming that everything's going to be successful, because guess what? It's not. You're going to learn stuff. Some stuff will be successful. Some stuff you'll crash and burn. And if you take, one of the things he says somewhere else that I love is the work is the gift and the outcome is the frosting. So if you're enjoying doing whatever you're doing, creating whatever you're creating, whatever it is, Excel, databases, software, we don't care. The work is the gift. How people react to it, or in our case, when we're putting things out for the public, we create a lot of content. Some of it gets some nice feedback and some of it gets crickets. You never know. But if I was, my self-esteem or my thinking I should or should not do this work was based on somebody else's response, you're giving away your joy. Your joy is in the doing. How other people respond to it, hopefully they like it, but if they don't like it, that's on them. It's not on you. They don't get to take your joy.
Right, but if you listen to a lot of, you know, people who are, and again, I don't want to make a generalization, but I've been on webinars or taken workshops where people are like, okay, you need to be speaking, you need to be showing up a certain way, you need to be doing things a certain way. And for some people like myself, it feels it doesn't feel authentic. It feels very fake. It feels pushed. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years of doing a lot of video is the ones that get the most engagement, the ones that get the most, oh my God, you're speaking to me, are the ones that are often completely unscripted. You know, half the time I don't have makeup on and I'm just speaking because all of a sudden it's like, you know what, this is important to share. And then I go off versus, you know, saying, okay, I want to talk about this thing. These are the points that somebody needs to know. This is how I can help somebody take action. It doesn't, yes, it's good and it can be useful to some people, but ultimately creating from that place, it's not joyful. The other way is joyful. And you
stay in your joy, and someone can take that and turn it into the other thing if you need them to.
Exactly. But it's creating from that place and and being willing to not censor yourself because of what you had said earlier, what you think, how you think somebody else is going to receive that. You're
Right.
creating it, you're doing the joy for you, but everybody else gets to benefit from that.
Yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about authors who say, you know, I want to help people. She's like, oh God, don't help me. She goes, you write the book that you want to write because you want to write it, and hopefully it helps somebody. But the energetic of trying to push or force your opinion or your idea down somebody's throat doesn't feel good, and it's often not as good or an interesting book. So what I heard from you is you were talking from the heart about something you cared about something that you hoped would be valuable, but you'd had to express it. And that's why it's passionate if you're doing it from the boardwalk with a baseball hat and no makeup on.
Right. Right. I was going to write something. I was very upset about something. Not going to get into what it was, but I felt the need to write about it. And I was going to then post it on social media. And I didn't do it, but I wrote it out and I sent it to a friend, and she called me up and she said, you edited this. And I said, I did. She goes, I can tell you edited this because you
There were
said
no
that.
expletives.
Well, she said you were really passionate about it, but she goes, I know you're passionate about this issue, but your passion doesn't come across because you've edited it for other people. And so the willing, and ultimately the thing never got posted, but it's like, are you willing to fully put yourself out there? Be in your passion, be passionate about whatever it is, come from a place of joy, or at least something that's in alignment with who you are.
Who you really are, your thread, who you've been since
Right.
you were a kid.
Right, exactly. Instead of immediately going, well, no, I can't show up this way, because if I did all of these things, it's profound, at least. And I see it with my clients, but I've also seen it with me, that over the years, how much, now that I'm a coach, looking at my stuff with the 70,000 foot view, looking down and saying, look, when you were doing this many years ago, you were doing it for somebody else. You weren't doing it for yourself. And being able to look and go, okay, if you distill it down to what brings you joy, then when you reconnect to that, it all then starts to unfold and make sense around where you're supposed to be playing, how you're supposed to be playing. It becomes much clearer, instead of trying to force yourself into other people's boxes or definitions of how and who you're supposed to be in the world.
Yeah, which dilutes it. And then you wonder why you're not getting a good response. You're not getting a good response because you're not talking to the right people or not showing up as yourself. That's why I always tell people you have to be magnetic, right? If you're in your aligned power, if you're showing up as you, like, sometimes I have to clean it up, but you're showing up as mostly you in alignment, it's magnetic to your right people. And that's what,
yeah. And like, I think before we got on, we were talking about, that you've been around somebody who is fully in that energy, because you think to yourself, I want what she has.
That's like cologne. You're like, ooh, give me some of that.
Yeah. And you can see, and you're immediately drawn to that person, and you may not know why, but it's because they are fully being themselves. And it's a wonderful thing to see. And it makes me realize how few people, because it is a very vulnerable place to be fully yourself when you're just operating from that place of joy for you. It doesn't mean you need to be a jerk, but you're operating from that place of joy. And that then is attractive to other people, versus just being very closed down and thinking you're supposed to show up in a certain way because that's what you heard when you were a child.
Yeah. So my takeaways are, it's helpful to get objective and figure out who you naturally are, what your surroundings might have been that gave you different ideas or told you that you were something that you subsequently may have integrated as who I am, which may not be you. They may be, but they may not be, but it's worth looking at them objectively, saying, yes, I am this type of person, or I want to be this type of person. No, heck no, I do not want to be that type of person, and then go do something else. Not get so attached to your situation or your job or your vocation or, whatever, that you think there's no other way to do it. There's often other ways to do it.
Yeah, and what I'll add what you said, it's we get stuck, many of us, I should say, get stuck labeling ourselves because someone at some point told us that, oh, well, you're an introvert, you're this, or, you're somebody who has this type of personality, or you take one of those tests.
You're the smart one in the family. You're the pretty one in the
Exactly.
family. You're the athletic one in the family. You're the whatever.
Right. And we go around and we proudly wear those labels, and we just assume that that's, well, we've always been like that. This is who we are. And the reality is, at any point in time, you can look at that and get curious and go, am I really?
We're back to really?
Right? Am I really this way? You might have some tendencies towards that, but to label yourself like, this is who I am, and I'm unwilling to change, even though showing up in that way really doesn't make you happy. Just because somebody told you that does not mean that it's true. But your willingness to get curious and go, okay, let me really see, let me sit in that. Am I really that way? What if I were to show up in a different way? Would that feel more like me? And just giving yourself permission to do that. I think as we get older, that you're more willing to go, well, you know what? I don't care what that person says.
That's too short. Something happens and you realize that you could make a different choice, or you're really unhappy and you're like, yeah, life's too short. I'm going to go try that. Yeah, it might be a total train wreck. Okay, then you'll have a really good story to tell.
Exactly. And one of the things that I love that Rob Bell had said was, people would, if you're not quite sure, like what kind of big leap you want to make, and you want to just do something just to see what it is, you're like, well, I'm doing this for now. And that's okay, right? It's just for now. It doesn't define you. It doesn't mean that you don't know what the hell you're doing. It's none of that. It's just, I'm doing this for now. Right. Because I think it would be fun. I want to see where it leads me. And
I'm a spinning instructor for now. I might go back to PR. I might study to become a coach.
Right, exactly. But in looking back, I can see why every decision that I made where I felt pulled to go in that moment has led me to exactly how I am showing up today. And I can see the gifts even in those setups that were not ideal. I can see the lessons from those setups that I now can bring with me and go, okay, I needed to go through that in order for me to be able to show up in the way that I want to show up and do the work that I need to do. I had to go through that dark period of time, or I had to take that job where my boss was a jerk, so I can learn those things. And now I can just, instead of bringing them with me, they're lessons that I put down the negative, and it's like, okay, I'm carrying the lessons forward from there.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from not that, more of that, not that, more of that, less of that. And that's, I think we bounce off, the way I feel about it is we bounce off the wall till we sort of come at the right thing. But
and it's not a failure if you decide to take, like you said earlier,
a failure, because you learned something.
Exactly. But that's a hard thing for a lot of people to, they label that as failure. And it's not, it's a lesson.
All right, well, that was super fun. Anything you want to leave people with? Let something juicy to entice them?
Juicy. I really would say figure out what it is that just, it sounds so cliche, but that the last time you really felt joyful, and really try to sit in that. And at the very least, if you can start to incorporate some of those things, I think you're going to see your life shift, and just get curious about, why does this make me so happy? because I think that there's so much stuff that's covering that, but just asking yourself, why, why, what is it about this thing? And start to do more of that.
Yeah, I think for some people, they can see and feel the joy, and some people may have to go at it from the curiosity part. Why am I always thinking about this? Why am I reading up on this? Why am I interested in this? That's strange. I just listen to the whispers of curiosity. When people tell me they don't know what they want to do, I'm like, where do you waste time on the internet?
That's a good question.
Right? What drops you down the rabbit hole? And you're like, oh, and someone's like, AI, it's going to revolutionize. I'm like, fine, then let's figure out some way for you to play in that. They need all sorts of people in that. You don't just have to be an engineer.
Right. But they immediately, because they don't have the background, it's not.
I'm not an engineer. I haven't done user experience. I haven't, whatever. Okay. Do you think they need marketing people? Do you think they need people who can do the books? Do you think they need project managers? Do you think they need a bunch of people? You just transfer those skills over there if that's what, but so there's different ways in. There's curiosity. If you're an analytical questioner, maybe you get in it that way. Or if you just have sort of a whispery feeling, you're like, why, curious. Or joy, like, oh my God, that was so much fun. I want to do more of that. Okay. Then let's figure out how you get to do more of that, assuming that there's nonsense in every job. I mean, this isn't sunshine and roses. You and I,
sure.
There's nonsense in everything. But if you can spend some time in joy and flow, there's no better way to spend your time.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. You just have to be willing to give yourself the permission to actually explore that, instead of just accepting that this is the way things are done. This is the path I have to take. It's asking the question, well, what if I stepped off this path? And not immediately tell yourself you can tell yourself all the reasons why, but then say, well, what if the opposite were true for all of those things? And see where it takes you. We just have to open ourselves up to the possibility that we actually can have the things that we say that we've always wanted.